are someone who believes that you have succeeded or failed in the past because of your abilities, because you are good at some things and not good at others, because you have certain innate gifts and weaknesses that have propelled you forward or held you back. If you believe that in some respects you won the DNA lottery and in others you kind of didn't, then I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but that story is wrong. And if it's a little disturbing to find out that the story you've been telling yourself about yourself is wrong, please know that I understand completely, because I've been there. When I was a graduate student, my first year, studying motivation, I read about 40 years worth of journal articles about motivation and performance and achievement. And I realized, to my profound dismay, that the story I had been telling myself about myself was completely wrong. I had always thought that I was good at school, I got good grades, because I was smart. And when my big brother, who was an extraordinary athlete, tried to teach me to catch a ball in our backyard, I caught it with my face. And I concluded from that I must not have gotten the athletic genes that my brother had gotten. That's how I thought things worked. You're a math person, or you're not a math person. You have lots of willpower, or you don't. You're socially skilled, or you're not. That was the story that I believed. And it turns out that story is wrong. And until I learned about what the science of motivation and performance had to say, it never occurred to me that I got good grades because I took all the actions that I needed to take in order to get good grades. And it never occurred to me that I was such a lousy athlete because after I used my face as a catcher's mitt that one time, I basically never tried again. I gave up. We're so used to thinking, and nowhere more so than in the United States, that our successes and our failures are about what we are. When in fact, we're not aware that we're telling ourselves a story. It's so automatic that we think this way, right? We talk about people, you look at someone who's successful and you say, oh, that person's a genius. That person has so much talent. And we use words like genius and talent to explain their success. And we think of these things as innate. And they're not. And by the way, that's really also pretty much not why they're successful to begin with. When we don't realize that the story we're telling ourselves is wrong, then we also don't realize that we're making bad choices because of the story we're telling ourselves. We don't realize that we're making faulty predictions about ourselves. And we don't realize that we're closing doors. We're shutting off possibilities. We're selling ourselves short. And that there are goals that we might have reached if we had told ourselves a different story. In point of fact, it's actually never about what you are. Success and failure are about what you do and what you don't do. Ability, for the record, is not actually meaningfully innate, and it's also extremely overrated. Everybody in this room can think of somebody they've known who seemed to be bursting with ability, who went nowhere. Right? We all know that kid, usually from high school, you know, somebody who fits that bill. And so it's really what you do. All the ability in the world, you could have an abundance of ability. And if you don't take the necessary actions, if you don't take the right steps, that ability doesn't get expressed. And all the ability in the world won't do a damn thing for you. Now, knowing that isn't even remotely useful unless we know what the necessary actions are. And here again we have a problem. Our intuitions about motivation and success are just shockingly terrible. And it turns out, and there are studies that actually show this, that if you take a very successful person and you ask them, what makes someone successful in your area? Or what made you successful? Why have you had so many successes? The answer they will give you is more likely to be correct than anyone else's. They'll tell you a story, because we always tell stories, but they may not tell you the right one, because they may not know what it is. And this is where taking a scientific approach comes in really handy. Because rather than having to rely on your own intuitions about why you succeeded or failed, you can take a step back and look a little bit more objectively at what hundreds of people do. And this is what we do in my area of psychology. I'm a social psychologist, but I study motivation. And what we do is we take hundreds of people in the laboratory, in the workplace, in the classroom, on the playing field, and we watch them. We watch them try to reach goals. And we identify what works and what doesn't. And at the end of the day, it always comes down to whether or not they used the right strategies or didn't. If they took the right actions or they didn't.